Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. And today we are talking about habits or patterns or routines, whatever word you like to use. And Catherine, this was one you came up with. So tell us about habits.
Well, you know what? I actually was surprised to see we hadn't specifically covered this as a topic so far. So I was actually quite excited because it's that time of year where we are recording this early on in the year, and everyone, of course, is talking about habits. And whether you mean patterns, routines, resolutions, goals, whatever we're talking about exactly, I just thought, oh, I'm surprised we haven't explicitly covered this. So let's talk about them
How remiss
because I
of
think
us.
it's useful to revisit at any time of year
Mm.
because actually our habits, well, let's just give that a definition. So a habit is a behavior that is repeated regularly. That's all it is. It's nothing that fancy. So it is effectively a kind of pattern, but it's often without conscious awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So and allegedly 40% of our behavior on a daily basis is habit based. So it's just
Whoa.
something that we're used to doing. So some of us may think, oh, I don't really have habits. But actually, more than likely,
Mm.
you do. You just do them without really thinking about them. And we're used to thinking about habit. When we hear the word habits, I don't know if you're the same, Kirsty, but the thing that came up in my mind was like, oh, good habits are things like I go to the gym or I have a glass of water every morning. Bad habits are things like smoking, perhaps, or nail biting. Those, little quirks and things that we have that aren't so good for us. And we think we have good habits or bad habits. But
Yeah.
actually, they are just patterns of behavior. They could be completely neutral. It's just things we routinely do. So, for example, for us, I'll mention it, eating biscuits is definitely a habit. We probably don't regard it as one, do we? I know that my temptation once I've made a cup of tea is to search for a biscuit because I just
Yeah. It's linked,
something I
isn't it?
really do. Yeah, exactly. But you probably
Yeah.
don't think of yourself as a, well, you might, I don't know if you, I don't want to speak for you, Kirsty, but you probably don't think, oh, what's one of my habits? Biscuit eating.
Actually, I might. I generally think of biscuits when anything's mentioned, so I probably would, but that's just a particular trait. But I mean, it's just even things, as you were saying that, I was thinking about it, and what came up for me then was the way we get dressed, the order we put our clothes in, and things like that. It's not
Yeah,
something you think about, but if you start noticing, you probably realize you get dressed in the same way all the time
yeah,
without having ever really thought about it or decided on it.
exactly. And that's because why do we have them? And I think this is where we can perhaps point out the difference between the conscious and perhaps the unconscious habits that we have.
Hmm.
And it's because our brains are secretly lazy. I know we don't like to think that they are, but that
Not
is
so
the truth.
secretly in my case.
But it likes shortcuts. It doesn't want to use its precious energy and resources. If imagine if
Mm.
everything all day was like, what shall I do? How shall I do it? What order shall I do it in? No, your brain doesn't want that. It needs to preserve energy for the things that where it has to do like problem solving, the real kind of draining tasks. You know how tiring it is sometimes when you felt you've done something new for the
Oh
first
dear.
time, you've learned a new system. That's because you're drawing upon your reserves and the energy for your brain. But so to make up for that, it likes to be able to just have things it doesn't need to really think about. You'll just do it. It's just gonna I know what's gonna happen. I'll get up and I'll make a cup of tea and I'll have a piece of toast. That's my kind of routine. You just get on with it and
Yeah.
you do it without thinking about them. And that's when, of course, if you're a nail biter, you may not realize it, but it's something you do perhaps when you're nervous or you're anxious, and you're not aware of it. or it is that conscious choice. We are aware of it. We choose to do it, like going to the gym on a Wednesday. They're just part of an accepted pattern that we have adopted.
Yeah. And what you said about, how tiring it is to think of everything. I mean, at the time of recording, I have not long started a new job and I am frankly knackered. I am that you really made me realize, how much I am having to think about everything I do during the day at the moment. Now I'm in a new place. I've got the journey to work is new and different. The place I'm working is different. The people are different. The tasks I'm having to do are different. The things I'm having to use to do the tasks are different. It's a huge change. And I have been absolutely exhausted. And there's a part of me going, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't be this tired. Shouldn't.
Oh,
That word. But the way you just pointed it out, that is just such a good example of how much energy is saved by habits, by these unconscious, well, they may start as conscious, but they eventually become unconscious, don't they? That's the point of them.
yeah, exactly. So,
Ways
for
of doing
example,
things. Yeah.
yeah, like you've probably been working out the best route to get there, the time you need to leave, the bus you want to catch, all of those things. But in time, that's going to become this is the one that works. I won't need to think about this so much
Yeah.
anymore. That will just become part of the natural habit, and you'll preserve some of the energy needed for that part, which you can then use for the learning the new skills and so on, which of course in
Okay. Yeah.
themselves will also become habit. But let's talk a little bit about the intentional stuff, and let's talk a little bit about
Mm.
breaking of bad habits and the forming of new good ones, because that's what most of us want to do, isn't it? Especially at certain times of year. This is something that comes up quite a lot. Um, but unfortunately, this is why it can be difficult, because if it's something we are just repeatedly doing out of, a pattern that we've established, that's why actually breaking habits can be hard and forming new ones, because we're asking our brains to interrupt this lovely pattern it's got used to and accommodate a change. So this is why it takes people talk about certain time. I mean, I know there's all sorts of figures bandied around for this for how long it takes to form a new habit. I don't think there's like a universally agreed amount of time, but you can understand why there is a time to it, because it's you're talking about establishing a new pattern that you've accepted and adopted, and it's become your new norm. And this is one of the reasons why, unfortunately, it can be bad, and why we spoke before in our New Year's resolutions episode about how they just don't last, because by February, I think about 80% have dropped by the wayside. It's not become that new unconscious repetitive pattern yet. It's become too hard, perhaps. And that's why
Mm.
we've abandoned it and gone back to what we knew was comfortable and we could do and we're doing in the first place.
Yeah. Especially when we're tired or under pressure, it is perfectly natural that we're going to revert to old habits and patterns that require less energy, that are well known to us, that we don't have to think about. So yeah, that bit, as you get through, January and February, people are often stressing about all the money they've spent at Christmas, and because they're trying to do dry January, or they've started a diet, or they've started these habits of putting more into their lives than they used to have, doing more and different things, that it takes energy and it's tiring and they can feel under pressure. And
Yeah,
what happens at that point? It becomes so much easier to just revert to what needs less energy. It's a natural reaction.
yeah, yeah. It's almost like we need to get over this kind of hump when
Yeah.
it becomes the new adopted pattern, for want of a better word. I know I've said it so many times. So that's effectively what we're talking about. We're
Mhm.
establishing like just a new pattern that we don't have to think about so much. And who's to say how long that is for each individual? And it might even depend on what that pattern is you're trying to break. If it's a really, really long established one, like smoking, which I think is notoriously difficult to give up, perhaps the longer you've done it for, the longer it's been part of your life, the the order in which you do it in, it's probably going to be harder to establish that new accepted pattern for you. But the good news is once you have got over that hump, you will have adopted a new pattern, and that becomes the norm. But
Yeah.
just relying on our willpower alone to do that is extremely difficult. So let's talk a little
Especially
bit about
when it's a
how
big
we
change.
can, Sorry.
So especially when it's a big change that
Yeah.
requires much more focus. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk a little bit how we can support habit development if we've
Yes.
recognized there is something that we want to change. Because achieving sustained new behavior, that's effectively what we're talking about doing. It's a process. It's not going to be overnight, but it is so important. And I'm sure we've spoken about this before. It has to be something that you want to change. So it's
Mm,
it's the you that's very
yeah.
important in that, and you really do want it to change, because if the genuine desire just isn't really there, it's like, I feel like I should do this. We spoke about this, I'm sure, in the should episode. It's going to be very difficult to introduce and sustain a new habit. It's like, if your heart's not in it, if you already know deep down your heart's not really in it, it's not really going to take off, is it? We need to be honest with ourselves, I think, about the
Absolutely. Yeah.
realism of that desired new change.
Yeah, I mean, if you decided to go to gym and lose weight because you're a dress size 14 and you think that society expects you to be a dress size 8 or less or whatever it is, but actually you're okay with how you are deep down.
Mm.
You feel that actually you're healthy and the way you look isn't the most important thing to you, but everybody else around you is focused on it. It's easy to get sucked into that idea, I should be going to the gym, I should be on it, I should be losing weight.
Yeah.
And to keep stating his intention when deep down that's not what matters to you. And you it'll be easy to give up on that in order to use energy for things that do matter to you.
Yeah, exactly. And this is interesting because for me, going to the gym would be a means to an end type habit,
Mm,
because I don't love the idea of going to the gym. And in fact, I don't. And I've not made any commitment to try and make, because I just know my heart's not in it. I already know
yeah.
I'm setting myself up for failure. The thing is, I am attached to a desired outcome of being, say, fitter and healthier. But I know that the gym is not the means to get there for
Hmm.
me. I hope that makes sense. So for me,
Yes.
I know I'm much more likely, and in fact I do go out walking, and I get some exercise and fresh air and nature. That appeals to me far more than going to the gym. So it's contributing to my goal. I don't see the gym as my means to get to my desired outcome. So I'm not going to bother introducing it. That's the
Yes.
way I see it.
But it can be very quite easy to get sucked into the idea that I want to lose weight and be fit, therefore I must go to the gym because that's what everybody talks about doing to
Mm,
weight. So recognizing what works for you, what it is you want, as opposed to whether it's about other people's values and expectations and ways that are going to work for you. They might not be the ways that work for everybody else.
yeah, exactly. And this leads quite nicely onto the next one, which sounds so obvious, but, and I can just share a really ridiculous example that I was making difficult for myself. Make the change as easy as possible for you, because we've already said that our brains don't really like this interruption and change that we're kind of asking it to adopt. It takes energy and effort. So if we make it easy, we are far more likely to do it because you're almost presenting it as the option. So, for example, if you've got that glass of water next to your bed the night before, and in the morning your intention is, I'm going to drink water before I go and have my cup of coffee, if it's right there, you're more likely to just reach
Yeah.
for it in the first place. And it sounds so obvious. And the one that I did, Kirsty, I mean, this is so ridiculous. I love to read, and I am terrible for not having a bookmark with me. So I'll get to where I was, I'll read a few pages, and I'll put it down. And then I don't know where I was up to the next time. And it's just annoying having to faff around looking for. So now it's just like, how ridiculous. Why am I making it hard for myself? So now the book is next to my bed. It's on the bedside table. The bookmark is in. So I just know. And it's almost there, almost like challenging me to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, read some pages of the book before, and don't reach for your phone before you go to bed. That's the habit I want to sustain. So make it easy. Remove the phone
Yeah.
and put the book right there in my face, because I'm making it as easy as possible to say, well, it's this or nothing, really.
Yeah. If you don't want to eat the biscuits, don't buy the biscuits. I've
Well,
I've heard
yes.
I've heard that's a thing for some people. Yeah.
I'm afraid I'm never a don't buy the biscuits
No,
person.
me
The,
neither.
the trick is, I do understand when some people, they say if they're there, they will. The temptation is to eat them all. I get that, and luckily, I feel like I don't have to eat them all, but I would get very
Yeah.
anxious if they weren't there. That's
Exactly.
what
It's the comfort and security of knowing that they are there.
yeah. Yeah.
So what else can
So
we do?
okay, yeah, so we make it easy. I think I'm sure
Good
we've
plan.
spoken a little bit about this before. Interim rewards can be so motivational, and I seem to remember. I'm not sure what episode we spoke about this. It's say, for example, you really want to fit into a new pair of jeans, and you've set yourself that sort of goal that you want to achieve, and then you've been really good for a month, and you go to try them on, and sadly they still don't fit. That can feel so demotivating. Actually, you could have done so much good on the way to achieving that goal that maybe you could reward yourself with something in the interim to give you that little
Yeah.
bit of motivation to keep going. I think, I think there's no shame in it that we like rewards. We like to know what we're doing is worth it. We're telling our brains it's worth you sticking with this, not to go, oh, don't fit in with them, so sod it. I might as well go back to the
Yes.
old the old ways, the old habits that I had.
Yeah. If you want to drop a couple of dress sizes, for instance, and you've managed to lose some weight, d- but you still can't get into the dress size you want to, go and we don't even have to buy it. Go and try on something in the next dress size down from where you are. And when you find that that fits
Exactly.
or you're really close to it, that's a good feeling. Whereas
Yeah.
if you try on the clothes from where you're ultimately aiming for, that's probably still going to be a bit depressing.
Yeah. I think that links on really nicely to what talking about marginal gains, because I think a lot of the things that we want to do can feel quite big. Like,
Mm.
it'd be a bit like me trying to run a marathon. And if I waited so I was able to run a marathon to get a reward, Kirsty, this would be very sad times indeed, because I'd be waiting a really, really, really long time and my motivation would wane massively. But what if I've managed to get to 5K, 10K, half marathon? Those are milestones along the
Yes.
way, and I at the moment a half marathon is still like a massive leap away. I'm not going to be unrealistic about what I can achieve, and it's all these marginal gains that stack up, and
Hmm.
they really count. So it's like we're building up to that big goal rather than trying to go from a standing start and leap all the way to the end, where we're often going to like plummet in the middle, aren't we? It's you're moving along, and it's getting nearer and nearer each time.
Yeah, it's like building a reading habit. I can't remember, I saw this somewhere. Somebody said if you might think that reading a page a day is pointless, it doesn't get you anywhere. But that's 365 pages a year. That's, you can easily read a book in a year if you read a page a day. Okay,
Mm.
maybe not War and Peace, but choose wisely.
Yes.
But it can feel, well, a page a day, it's not worth doing. Well, if your aim was to start reading more, and a page a day takes you to reading a book a year, whereas you've not actually read a book in years, that's a good gain.
Yeah. Yeah, for very minimal effort. That's what's even
Yeah,
better. And there's that page will take what, a few minutes at most.
yeah,
And you'll be surprised. I think sometimes you've read one, and before you know it, you've read two, and then you've read three. That's the other thing. Sneakily, you'll actually will have built up on that very small start. Which brings me very nicely, thank you, Kirsty, onto my next tip, which is the power of 10 minutes. Because I think we do often think, oh, I need a big chunk of time to do this thing, for it to really count, for it to matter, for
yeah.
it to make a difference. And I say, God, do not underestimate the power of 10 minutes. And I've got a very, very real example. I downloaded a free app. I was looking for some weights workouts, and I found one that I love, and it's 10 minutes, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And, I found it, I like it, and I haven't changed from it in over a year and a half. I don't do it every day, but I try and do it most days, because I have to be honest with myself. Am I being, can I fit in 10 minutes? Yes, yes, I can. I can't really make that excuse and say I haven't got 10 minutes. But you can use that 10 minutes for whatever habit you are trying to develop, whether it's like you've just said, 10 minutes of reading. How much progress might you be able to make with just 10 minutes of
Yes, a
reading,
day. Yeah.
or 10 minutes of just even something that's very sort of still, like some reflection, some journaling, some just sort of being for a moment, you will absolutely notice a difference over time. And I know that's drawing on patience, which is a virtue that I
Hmm.
don't really have, but I have noticed a difference from doing this 10-minute weights workout. I've been doing it now for about a year and a half. And it even tells me it's got a little tracker. So I know how many weeks I've been doing it for, which is also quite motivating.
That's
But
very satisfying, isn't it? Yeah.
it is satisfying, but it has made a difference. I know, and I know I could probably amplify it if I really wanted to, but don't underestimate that 10 minutes really can make a difference.
It can. And we so often tell ourselves we don't have time. And yet, most of us will spend at least 10 minutes a day, a chunk of time, a 10-minute chunk of time, not just 10 minutes over the day, doing something like scrolling through social media
Mm,
or watching something on the telly that we really don't need to watch.
yeah.
That there are so many things that we do without even thinking about it that we don't need to do that aren't really benefiting us, that it wouldn't make any, significant difference to us to not do. And we could be using that time for something else. So, I mean, meditation, you'll find guided meditations that are well under 10 minutes. So if you think you haven't got time to do a meditation or whatever, you can do something. You can do a 2-minute breathing exercise.
Oh, yeah,
It
it could
doesn't
absolutely be
have to be
less.
big. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is
It,
this one's a really good counter argument for time, but it actually serves another purpose. And this is habit stacking. I'm sure everyone has come across this term, this idea that you attach the new desired habit onto something that already exists. And yes, that is a win-win from a time perspective, but it's not only that, it's actually a sort of helpful trigger, if you like, to do the new habit as well. For example, so it could be the daily thing that you do all the time, brushing your teeth. What else might you use that few minutes whilst you're brushing your teeth to either perhaps think about, or might you even do some exercises or just something? If
mm,
if you lump them together and get used to doing that, it's another trigger for your brain to remind yourself, oh, I do this thing at this point as well. You don't have to remember habit one, but if you lump habit two onto it,
yeah.
it's almost giving it a kickstart that you're going to remember to do that thing. And then you can't use time as an excuse either. So it gives you a double win, I think, when you do habit stacking. And I've mentioned that I go walking. The habit that I've now stuck onto that for me, which I really enjoy, is podcast listening, because I love a podcast. But also, it takes time to listen to one, and I can't find my when if I'm listening to something and trying to work at the same time, as they say, that's not multitasking, is a bit of a fallacy. I'll end up listening to a
Yeah.
bit, and and I'm not really
Not
paying full
focused on
attention to
either.
either.
Yeah.
But I've managed to work out I can walk and listen at the same time, so that's winning. So I've managed to stack those two together, so much to the point now that when I go out for the walk, I always look for my headphones, so I know the two go together, and then off I go. Don't have to really think about either of them anymore.
Yeah. On the the bus ride I take to get to my job, I reach for the headphones now. I can't read on the bus because it makes me travel sick. So now this is
Mm,
my opportunity to listen. I've started listening to the Today program in the morning from Radio 4, which is a very old habit. And it was interesting that I reverted to that so quickly. For most of my corporate life, I listened to the Today program when I was getting ready for work. And I was surprised at how that popped into my head so
yeah,
quickly when I started getting ready for work. But now I'm quite enjoying listening to a bit more about what's going on in the world as I go to work, and I listen to an audiobook or a podcast on the way home.
yeah.
It's kind of nice. And of course there's the having the biscuit with your cup of tea or coffee. That's the
Yep,
bad
yep,
habit
guilty.
stacking. Yeah. But that is definitely an example of bad habit stacking for me. Yeah.
They
It
go
it
together
it
so well,
demonstrates
don't
the
they?
point, doesn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't think
Um,
about it either. It's like, oh, I have one. Where's the other?
yeah.
Right. Our environment, and this kind of ties back to the sort of making it easy. You don't want to make it a challenge for yourself to be able to adopt that new habit. So as much as having perhaps the phone out of sight and the book is there ready in its place, that's an example of making it easy and having your environment to support you. Because the brain likes sort of cues and visual reminders, um, and it's going to respond more easily to those if you make it obvious and conducive. And like, so for example, if you're wanting to really focus on your work, maybe make sure the other things around you that would distract you from that are out of sight.
Yeah.
particularly there's research that suggests just having your phone near you, even if you've got it off or silent or whatever, just having it nearby is a distraction that you're more likely to be. Have you heard of that?
You're aware of it calling to you.
Yeah,
I can see what I hadn't heard of that, but I can see that it does weirdly make sense. Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, talking about things like if you feel that, you want to cut down on social media time, for instance, you feel, you want to claw back some of the time you're spending scrolling. You can adjust your environment by moving the social media apps off the home screen of your phone, by
yeah.
switching off notifications.
Yeah, it's going to take more effort to go in, to
Yeah,
log in, to find out what you've missed, what's going, rather than it flashing up in your face as a distraction of look at me, and breaking your attention from the habit that you were trying to introduce. And I think if we make it easy, if we have the environment that supports it, we stack, we don't underestimate the power of 10 minutes, we look for the marginal gains, we're setting ourselves up for every chance of succeeding. And I think this last one is the last tip that we have, at least, is a really important one, which is about preempting objections. So we've mentioned already that
mm,
using just our willpower alone is tiring. We can falter when we're tested. So if we can try and preempt and have a response ready, we're more likely to be able to face it and continue with the good habits. So a really good example could be you're taking a break from alcohol, but you've got a work due coming up this weekend, or it's someone's birthday, or you know there's probably going to be an opportunity where someone is going to offer you a drink, maybe try to buy, because either they just don't know, or you know it's likely to happen, or they might just want to tempt you with, just the one, whatever it might be, and you know it's going to sort of tempt you to break your habit. If you can think about what your response might be in that situation, like you're preempting that moment, your resolve is less likely to crumble, because you're
yes,
not having to use your resources to think of that. Oh well, I'm just, and making it up on the spot when you might be tempted just to cave in and keep the peace and just say yes, fine, or whatever it might be. If you know what your response would be, you are more likely to be able to
you're
overcome.
prepared for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, preparing in advance for what you might say, so you don't have to draw upon it
Mm.
in the moment.
And those kind of objections or difficulties can be more about you than other people. I mean, something that's quite common for people trying to give up smoking is they haven't realized what I think tends to be called the secondary benefits of smoking. That the time it gives, that the breaks it gives you during the day, if you work in an office environment or whatever, smoking is an opportunity to leave your desk, to go outside. And when you do that, you will probably be hanging around with other smokers. There will be a sense of community, a social thing going on around that. So it gets you, it gives you a break, it gets you outside, it creates a social situation for you. And a lot of people trying to stop smoking miss that. It's a
Mm.
loss they hadn't anticipated. It's a kind of an internal objection that arises as part of the process. So being aware of those kind of benefits that you might not have immediately associated with a habit you're trying to break, and to replace with something different, that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's such a good point, isn't it? Because it's actually, those aspects are nothing to do with the actual smoking part, but they can be equally as hard to give up. It's something that you also enjoy, that you've attached to this habit. But what if you could
Yeah.
take that and attach it to a new habit? Again, make it as easy as possible. Get the social interaction, the away from your desk, the being outside, but just without the smoking part.
Yeah, maybe it can be going for a quick coffee with a colleague instead, or to deliver you
Mm.
the same options, But in different scenarios, there were different things. And part of all of this thing is having that really strong sense of identity around the habit you want to create, of knowing that, I am the kind of person who does this, who wants this, who is going to be like desired outcome. When you've got that in your mind and these problems arise, and people want to sort of, with good intentions or maybe not, just interfere with that habit formation. When you've got that sense of, no, I am the kind of person who does this, not what they want me to. it is far easier to deal with those difficulties and objections.
Yeah. I said the final one, and I was totally lying. There is another one, which is a very good point, which is accountability and telling someone you're
Yeah.
going to do something. It just makes it more likely. And this is also true of just writing it down. If you just keep your desired habit, goal, pattern, whatever you want to call it, in your head, you're relying on yourself remembering it and having the willpower to enact it, as opposed to having it out there written down to remind you, whether you put it as a post-it note in your face that you're going to see every day, or it's written down somewhere where you'll just perhaps see it, or even
Yeah.
in a notebook. Obviously, if you just put it in a notebook and then stuff it in a drawer, it's not quite so good. But this idea of it's out of your head, and it's either
Yes.
and being accountable to yourself, or even more so perhaps to someone else, because they are likely to ask you, they're likely to check in with you and see how you're getting on. And as coaches, I'm sure we're very used to people saying, I would like you to help keep me accountable to this new behavior and check in on how I'm doing. And they want to be able to say something positive about how they're getting on, the progress that
Yeah.
they're making.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Just getting out of your head. As long as it stays in your head, you can pretend it never happened.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. No one knows, no one's any the wiser.
when it's in some way, it immediately becomes more real, doesn't it? Uh, and asking other people, you can actually ask other people to hold you accountable. Check in with me, and especially if there's two of you trying to achieve, you've both got, a habit you're trying to create. God, you said so. To check in with each other. It doesn't even have to be the same thing, but I am going to do this on this day, and have someone say, "Did you do it?"
Mm.
You're far more likely to do it rather than have to say, no, I didn't."
No,
But
and it
it,
always it can feel a bit like cheating, can't it? Because you think, are you doing it? You're almost doing it to please somebody else. You don't want to let them down. But actually, I'm kind of the view, no, it is something that I wanted. I just know that my willpower might falter, my motivation may go wandering for a moment. So as long as it's come from that very, like we said at the very start, it's come from the right place. I say there's
yes,
absolutely nothing wrong with having that extra spur to get it done, because what I'm hoping is it'll get to the point where I don't need you to keep me accountable for this. I'm happy to just do it myself because I've now got used to this new
yeah,
pattern. I don't need it. But if to help me get it going, like I said earlier on about
get
getting
over
to
the
that
hump.
hump.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'll do
we
whatever
spoke
it
the word as
takes.
one there. Yes,
Yeah.
but yeah, and let's be clear. You don't. If you are trying to establish a habit and it becomes clear to you that this is genuinely not right for you, you don't have to do it. There-
Mm,
what's the point of having a mind if you're not going to change it? It's go for it. It's not about tying yourself into things that turn out not to be right for you. It's about giving yourself the best fighting chance of achieving what it is you want to achieve in ways that work for you.
yeah.
Creating those
Oh, I love
habits that
that.
you want, breaking the ones you don't.
Yeah, love that. And that leads us very nicely on. We have some quotes to share with you on habits, and there are some great ones. We could have probably had, a whole episode just on these, to be honest with you. But so interesting what you were just saying about strengthening there, because I love this one. This is Horace Mann. He said, "Habit is a cable. We weave a thread of it each day, and at last it cannot be broken."
That's a really lovely metaphor, isn't
It
it?
is, isn't it? This idea of just strengthening something until it becomes this is my norm, and I love it, and it's as long as it is, as you rightly pointed out, because the habit that is right for us, because otherwise we will actually just stop weaving, and then that will
Yeah.
become a habit that drops in place of a new one. But I think we're in this case, we're talking about habits we really do want to sustain and make,
Yes.
and we're putting that effort in every day.
Hmm. And one that I liked was motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. And that was
Mm,
from Jim Ryan. I thought that's a lovely way of looking at it. You can start so enthusiastically, but if you take that time to build the habit, that's what keeps you going in the way that you want to, getting to where you want to go.
yeah. And I'll just end with this one, which is Gandhi, and it's so wise, and it makes so much sense in what the terms of what we do as coaches. And is your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. I'm like, wow,
Ooh.
what a chain of events there to be just seeing where habits feature in that is like you sort of demonstrating through what you're doing, because we said it's what you repeatedly do. It's going to determine how you live your life and what matters to you. So make it important and make it
Yeah.
count, I guess, is what he's saying. And I really love that.
Create the habits that work for you and take you where you want to go, and break the ones that interfere with that.
Yeah,
Whoa.
brilliant. So
And do we have a question on
of
habit?
course we
Of
do. Of
course
course we
we
do.
do.
And it's a lovely, simple one, but hopefully it will get everybody thinking. And it is there a habit you would like to build or break? And a little cheeky add on to that, what will you do to aid this successfully? So I think it's all very well saying, yes, I've got one, but I'm not going to do anything about it. So let's add the little extra bit there. And I suppose I guess I'm afraid I've cheated ever so slightly, because I did want to talk about that habit that I have been building for about a year and a half now, and it really has stuck. It's my habit of walking now, and I will do it come rain or shine. I used to be very much a fair weather walker. I do much prefer the shine. I'm going to be honest. It's much easier to do so when it's a lovely day. But it started with a sort of I must move more mentality. So it probably came from a not so quite so genuine point of view. I'll be really honest. I saw what my steps were and it was dire, and I thought this is not good. I need to change this. But I'm glad to say it has grown, and I feel the benefit of it. And I feel it in so many different ways. I feel it in my thinking, my mood, my productivity afterwards. So the secondary benefits of habits that we introduce can be so powerful. And I really miss it now. If it's a really rubbish day or something, and I won't walk as far as I normally would, I do really miss it, but I
Yeah.
will still try and do it regardless. And yeah, that those 10 minutes that I do with the weights, I have noticed some of the benefit now of a bit more strength. I'm not going to say much, but there is definitely some more strength, and it gives me that motivation to keep going. And what I like from this is that I've now demonstrated to myself that I can do it. So I can apply that thinking now to other new habits that I might want to introduce, which I
Yes.
think is really valuable.
That
What about you,
that's a
Kirsty?
powerful thing. I mean, quite similar in many ways. I mean, I from around 2020, I established the habit of running 3 times a week. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, always at 7 o'clock, thereabouts. And yeah, initially, it felt like such a chore, but I had had a bit of a health scare, and it really mattered to me to just look after myself a bit more, to make sure I felt fitter and healthier, to take action around it. And that was go back to the quote I used earlier, that was the motivation that got me out there. And and I did say to people, this is what I'm going to start doing, this is what I want to start doing. And that really helped as well, because it meant that when I woke up and didn't really want to get up, I knew that I'd said that to people. And so at first it was hard, and I'm not going to deny there have been plenty of mornings where I thought I do not want to get up in the dark and the pissing rain and go for a run. And yet I have never once regretted it. Never once. And interestingly, I came to notice there was a point as I left the house and just started to run when that sense of yes would kick in. This feels good. I am so glad I'm up and out. And because
Yeah.
my conscious awareness of that meant I was looking for it. I mean, right at the start of the run. And so that's come to feel really good. And when I had to take a break with eye trouble, and I think it's about a year I couldn't run, and I missed it a lot. And now I'm having to rethink it because I'm going to a different job, which means not working from home, and I have to leave the house not long after 7 for that. And really, I am not dedicated enough. I would have to be up and out running at about 5 in order to make it work, and that's not going to happen. So I was like, okay, 3 days a week, run after work. But I really noticed that thing of recognizing what's not right for me, because I'm just starting in a new environment, new job, new people. I'm very tired. So I actually adjusted it. The outcome I want is to be fit and healthy, to be moving my body, and to enjoy that experience. So it's a 3 mile trip to work. So I've already adjusted it in the last couple of weeks to either I'm going to run 3 times a week or walk home from work. So 3 times a week, one of those things is going to happen. That's the habit I intend to build. And that 3 mile walk home, it feels like a different exercise and I'm getting something different from it. But it does
Mm.
mean that I don't have to fight through that. I've just got home, especially in the winter. It's dark, it's cold. I'm absolutely knackered. I don't want to go out again. By committing to walking home from work, and I'll tell my husband in advance I'm going to do it so that, again, I'm accountable. I get out and I do it, and I am getting what I want, my desired outcome, but not necessarily in the way I'd initially intended.
Yeah, I love that. That's just a really good example of adjusting the habit when something else has inevitably
Yeah.
changed around you. You're
Life
looking
gets in
how
the
can
way,
I
right?
achieve maybe the outcome that I want, but through a different means.
Yeah.
Because if you recognize, I can certainly appreciate after quite a long day and you've just got home, the thought of then going back out. It's like, well, actually, how can I achieve the same kind of outcome, but through a different means? And it's also being kind to yourself, isn't it? Like you're taking on an awful lot of new stuff at once. How can I still support healthy habits, but not putting loads of pressure on myself to fit
Yeah.
absolutely everything in still that maybe was so much easier before?
So that's what I'm doing. I think as the evenings get lighter, the ratio of running to walking will probably change again, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
like you said about knowing that you can build the habits now, knowing that I could do it in the morning means that I trust myself to do this, and I'm willing to grant myself a little flexibility along the way rather than making it something bigger and more unpleasant than it needs to be.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I hope we've given you all lots to think about in terms of habits, the good, the bad, how to support them, but not to worry about it too much if it doesn't all go immediately according to plan. We are human, but we can always start again. I like to think there isn't always a behind, there is always progress that we can make. So we've got a few resources. We will share those as we do in the notes for the episode. Have a couple of blogs on habits, and there's a couple of other people that talk very, very well about
Mhm.
habits and supporting them. So I'd love to know how you get on, and do answer that question.
Yeah, and trust yourself. Trust yourself to do it.
Brilliant. So on that note, we will see you again soon for another episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.